It was mid-February of 2019 when I was sitting in the middle of my mastermind group. It was a group of high-level leaders, and we were spending the day just spending some time going even further on ourselves and being led powerfully in the group. And for this particular exercise, we were all going around and sharing something that was meaningful that we could all use some support with. And I asked for some support. I asked for some support, and shared a story in my life. And honestly, to tell you the truth, the story that I shared was really about uh, a story of belonging, of a time where I felt like I didn't belong. And I got some feedback. I got some feedback on that story around where it was powerful, where it was missing the mark. And I remember sitting in that circle, just really trying to get through a frustration. And the frustration I was trying to get through was the feeling of not being understood. And so as I was telling the story, people were coming back and giving me feedback, and they told me that I wasn't bringing enough emotion to it. They weren't able to feel my emotions in it. I remember being really frustrated, and then like saying, "Okay, well, if you want to hear a story where I have emotion, here it is." And I shared this belonging story with them. And right after I finished it, someone to my left raised her hand, and she said, "You know, you have this beautiful name. It's Niyama. And this story, you just use that word there. And I think to myself, why aren't you using that powerful and beautiful name more often?" You see, at the time, sitting in that circle, I'd been going by the name Nemo. I had been Nemo for over 20 or about 20 years at that time, ever since I was a high school student. And I got that nickname from my band group. And I was sitting in that circle, and she mentioned, why don't you use the name Niyama, which is the name that your parents gave you? It's imbued with power. It's a beautiful name. Why are you using this name Nemo? And I remember looking at her, turning to my left and looking at her, looking her right in the eyes and saying, "Thank you." And that's it. Just simply like accepting the comment, but not really receiving the comment. You know how that is. You know how that can be, right? But it's like thanks, but like I'm Nemo. I'm Nemo. And just really refusing the call to step into anything beyond. Right afterwards, I didn't know this. It was kind of like the 1-2 combo. Right afterwards, another gentleman in the circle stepped forward and said, "I need to tell you something, Nemo. And I'm going to say this loudly so you can hear it." And that kind of perked me up. I got like set up straighter in my seat. And I put my hands open and upwards on my lap so that I can take in the moment. And he said, "I need to say this. So I'm going to say this so you can hear it. You are a big, black, bold, beautiful man. And when you are that, people get you, people understand you because you are being in the fullness of you. You're just complete. You just make sense. But when you do this thing, when you're being fluffy and creamy and all around white, we lose you, and there's a disconnect, and we don't know what it is, and it causes a little bit of discomfort. And the thing is, Nemo, you don't need to make us feel safe. You don't need to make anyone feel safe." He said those words to me, and I I had no words to say afterwards. I had no words to say afterwards because inside of me there was almost like a chasm that got opened up, and I can feel almost on the inside here a massive shift because he had said the words, "You don't need to make anyone feel safe." And I hadn't realized it at that time, but I had put the burden, the responsibility of making other people feel safe around me as one of my top priorities. As one, and I was so in it that I didn't recognize that I was doing it. Why? Because And as he said, I am a big black man. I'm a big black man. And the fear that I thought that people would get if they saw me as a big black man, the thoughts that would come to their mind, the stereotypes that I would go into, really did not have room for who I really felt I was. I thought if I was seen that way first and foremost, then I would be judged by that as opposed to who I am. And so in that comment, the juxtaposition of you are a big, black, bold, beautiful man with it is not your job to keep anyone safe. You do not need to keep anyone safe. And my colleague turning to me and saying, there is power in your name, Niyama. Why aren't you using it? Somehow that led to this magical confirmation of events. And like I said, it almost felt like there was a chasm within me that just like opened up wide enough for this name, Niyama, which I hadn't used in 20 years, to come forth. And I still have the notebook. I wrote down in this notebook here, it said, I am Niyama Shang. I am Niyama Shang, Niyama Shang, Niyama Shang, Niyama Shang. I was crying at the time. Tears were flowing down my face. In fact, after he said it, I didn't have words, and I'm a talker. I reached up to this gentleman. I just gave him a hug as tears started landing on his shoulders. And the rest of the circle continued with the exercise, and I sat down. And after what felt like an hour, we closed the circle down before our evening activity. I just had one thing to say. It was the only thing I could say. So while we were all sharing our insights for the day, I came out and made one announcement. And it was, as of this moment, Nemo is complete. And going forward, I shall be Niyama Shang from here on out. It was on that day that I started to reclaim the power of my name. And that's here is what this conversation is all about. It's an opportunity for us to explore the power of our name, the power of the names that we were given, the power of the names that we were chosen, the power of the names that we have chosen. And also the power of the labels that we may give ourselves or the ways in which we use ourselves. Just understanding the power of names in both the literal and figurative sense for us. I am Niyama Shang, leader of the World Joy Movement. And today we're going to have a World Joy conversation. A World Joy conversation is not like any other conversation you typically have. This is a conversation where we're not here to debate or convince, but we're actually here to listen and to be transformed. See, that last part is really interesting. To be transformed. We're not here to change anyone else. We're not here to get other people to see things the way we see it. We are actually in this space for a space of transformation, to share in such a way, with such level of honesty and depth, that we encourage, absolutely with courage, that we are, each individual here is able to transform themselves just a bit. Our measure of success here is 1% different. You can leave here 1% different, 1% deeper in your knowledge, 1% more connected to yourself, 1% more connected to someone else. Then we've succeeded in our conversation. We look at our World Joy conversations as an opportunity to leave the way that most people think that connection and communication and relationship is formed. And instead, we give ourselves a chance to explore the communication techniques, tools, and experiences that are going to take us and help us move forward in this ever more uncertain and ever more volatile world. Because one thing that we found is that as the times get less and less stable, as each day looks more different than the day before, the fastest way to have the surest footing is to be able to be in communication, to share ideas, to share information, to get help, to have someone look at you and ask a powerful question to help you see places you haven't been and that no one else has been. It's hard nowadays, and we each have our challenges, and we come together under a conversation to be able to find that deeper connection. And through that, through the connections built here, find opportunities to collaborate all throughout the work that we do, and even further on the World Joy Movement platform, which you can go to by going to beworldjoy.com. So today, we're going to have that kind of a conversation all around the power of your name. I'm joined today by someone who I'll allow to introduce herself, and we're just going to talk. We're not coming as two experts in I was going to say name calling. That feels like the wrong thing here. We're going to come in as two experts in our own lives, two masters of our own lives, and people on a path of mastery. And that path of mastery may not mean that we are at the level of knowing everything and having 100% agency of it all, but we're choosing to go down the path of apprenticing to ourselves to find out more about who we are and share that power out here. So I'd love to open up the mic here. Let's just start off here. You can unmute yourself here, and if you can, would you mind letting us know the name that that we can use with you during today's conversation?
Mary.
Hey, Mary. Hey, Mary. It's really wonderful to have you here. It's really wonderful to be in conversation with you. Throughout today's conversation, like I love to say, I'm going to lead, but you're in control. So what that means is like, we've started out this conversation a certain way with me sharing a story. I'd love to hear some stories from you as well. But let's just go back. Let's just be in the conversation here. Mary, can I ask what made you say yes to this conversation? What made you say like, oh yeah, like something's going down and I want to be a part of it?
It was the conversation about, I felt like it was self, the true, authentic, genuine you, me. And I think that's where it starts the core. When a person can be authentic with themselves first, then you have an authentic conversation. And I wanted to grow in that area so I can have better connections than I already believe I have. So I was like, yeah, this is the thing to grow me so that I can connect better.
Indeed it is, Mary. So let's play with this here. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're here. It's so interesting. I'm realizing in this moment that, you know, in sharing the story, it's created a certain space. And I want to leave room for I want to leave room for whatever we need in this place to both play and to continue to go deep. Mary, I'm curious. I'm really curious here, just so I can get to know you in this particular space here, right? Would you mind sharing? Let's see. Let's think about this. What does your name mean to you?
Mary is inclusive of who I was born, the legal name I was born with that my parents gave to me. It's also what I've grown myself to be, and includes the wiser me. My name means light, a gift, a guide. It's also one of my grandmother's names that I never met. So I'm very proud of it.
And you say that it takes me to we just had a child, our first child, and in the Ghanaian tradition on my father's side, we names are bestowed or chosen based on other prominent or significant people in our family lineage. So when you talk about your name after your grandmother, it makes me think about how we went and named our child as well. And it just there's power that comes through that there.
And an added note, my full name is Mary Lou Jean Porter, that I was born with. Mary is my mother's name, and Lou Jean is my father's mother's name. I don't tell everybody my full middle name. People that are very close to me know me as, they may call me Mary Lou. I have a good close friend that just calls me Lou or Louie. I love my grandmother, and I used to be more proud of it when I was younger, but kind of embarrassed at the same time of a young person having what society thought as a quote unquote older person's name in my generation. So I like advertise it. I just say, okay, I'll let some people call me Mary Lou, and it's just Mary L. For years, I just used my middle initial and my full name. And then I decided that I love my full name. I would own it, but still wouldn't allow everybody to call me that name because it felt like a personal thing. That if you call me by my full name, or at least my first two names, we're very personal. Um, so I adapted Mary LP. It felt still personal, like a little closer connected and inclusive of my name. And it also felt like the me that I designed, that I always wanted to be, not who everybody else said I was or thought I was. Because as Mary L. Porter, all my life, I lived according to other people's terms and what they wanted. So I didn't want people to call me Mary L. Porter because I felt that that wasn't the authentic me. I have come to realize that the me today is self-created. I've created the world, the authentic me, from the little kid that was initial to the adult that has acquired many wisdoms. So I believe that like Mary LP is just all inclusive, open enough to be personal and allow other people in, but still have my self and to be a little bit selfish.
I am, a lot of curiosity comes up within me as you say this here. Firstly, just thank you for sharing. And I think, as we have this conversation, you'll see, Mary. It might break our flow just a bit, but I also want to do a little bit of teaching as we're going through this year, just to point out different things that's coming along, right? Right now, the tool that I feel really strongly attuned to is curiosity and gratitude. I'm grateful that you shared your full name here, and the story around it, like and how you feel around it. So thank you for that. Like it's if I'm being honest, like it just really hits me. There's areas where that resonates. It's not for me. It's not about my name being an older name, but it's being an African name. It's like clearly not American. So like I get the I get on one level, um, like how that can shape and how that might change things. I get really curious. That's the second tool here. So the first one is gratitude. This after I let's say it like my face is like beams. I'm just like I'm so happy. Yeah, because I've known you, but I haven't known this story. Um, and then the second thing here is curiosity. And for me, curiosity lives in the world of a story right now. You had said that one day you decided that you are gonna own your name. It didn't mean that everyone else gets to just use it, but for you, if I'm getting this right, for you, you're like this is who I am. Let me make sure I own that. Am I getting that right there? Am I firstly in the right place?
I said that honestly, I've always been proud of my name.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the same pride that I'm gonna shout it to the world pride. I felt I felt the pride of, hey, I get a family name, both of my grandmothers, nobody else. My siblings didn't get any part of a heritage name. Like it meant a lot to me to have a name that was passed down. None of my siblings had. They might have had a variation, but I had the exact name. And I always felt like in my spirit that I was connected to both of my grandmothers, whether the one I knew was still alive, thank God, and the one I never met, that I just heard stories about it. And the stories I've heard, they're like night and day people. um, but I always wanted my own too. It was a privilege to have someone else's name, but at the same time, was my unique name. My siblings had their unique names that were pulled out or whatever name. Um, I was a part. Excuse me, I just had this. Now that I say that, it makes me think back and the story that you told about belonging. I never saw my name like that. I saw my name as being a part, but not me as being a part. I always felt most of my life growing up that I was not a part of things, that I was an outsider and I didn't belong anywhere, not in my family, not with my friends or anywhere. And wow, just seeing how I realized that my name is a part, I more belong than my siblings. Seems as though like if anyone belongs, I belong. Definitely.
Man, how does that feel to say that aloud to come to that? I know. And let me rephrase that question, Mary. I'm just really curious what's going on inside of your body right now, like as you say that.
Man, it's like a bundle of this little fire ice. If I were to give it a description, because I'm a creative visual person,
Mhm.
it looks like a electrical bluish reddish ball that's just like pulsating. That's how it feels like from like here to my upper torso. And then I feel like tingles throughout my extremities.
I
It's amazing.
Again.
I said it's amazing. I don't I'm about lost for words and I talk a lot and I usually have a lot of words.
Yeah, I asked because in my mind I was making up. I'm like, oh wow, that sounds tremendous, right? And I wanted to make sure that like that I actually checked in with you to see like what was actually taking place within you, right? And not even from like what we would mentally say this is what it needs to be, but instead just like checking with what was happening in your body, just to be just to even just be more present with you, just be even more present in here. You brought back in belonging for me, and um, it's interesting to me because as much as I think that I'm moving away from belonging or I'm having a conversation that's not about belonging, like in one way, shape, or form, it is always, it's like how can we simply belong to ourselves so we can be in the world and then collaborate and bring all of who we are to the table to collaborate and co-create with people, you know? Um, it's it's not lost on me right now that what you're saying. It actually takes me, well, yeah, it took me to actually a really interesting place while you were talking, you know. And so like I was with you, and then like this memory popped into my mind. This memory showed up here, and I'm like, well, I'll bring it in. I'll bring it into our pool of conversation, and we'll see where it goes. Um, the memory here is of three words: special dark chocolate. Special dark chocolate. Um, Going back to belonging, I think the first real like conscious tests of that for me were in high school, and in the same year that I got Nemo as a nickname, which was my freshman year, um, I also had a number of people who were they were trying out different nicknames for me. They're like Niyama, yeah. So like I went through a whole slew. I was uh Duracell, Noxema, Good Burger. Like there were some names that came around. But there are also two names in particular that like stuck with me as like names that couldn't that just weren't acceptable. That really got into the space of just true non-belonging. And I think this is important for me. Like when the two names that came up, one of them was a group of people who just called me Black Guy, and they would just say, "Hey, Black Guy," and that was the nickname they gave me. We were Actually, I was about to find myself making excuses for them. I'm gonna let that go, right? And then the other one was Special Dark Chocolate, you know, and it was SDC. It was the abbreviation of that nickname. Um, and I'm curious to myself why that came up right now. In particular, the the thing that I think makes this feel so real in this moment is that when I was bestowed the nickname of Nemo, um, to me it was an act of true belonging there. At least what I thought belonging was, right? But it was like this idea of, wow, people like me enough to like want to give me a nickname, you know, like this, like they know me enough and they're not just giving me a nickname just because. It's like, no, it's what we do. It's like you're gonna get a nickname. I remember I walked in and they're like, Niyama's your name? Oh man, you're gonna get a killer nickname before the end of this year, you know? And I remember feeling with Nemo, one, it was safe and neutral. It was named after Adventures in Dreamland, you know, this French cartoon of a person flying around on a bed all the time. Um, and getting the name and getting the nickname Nemo, I actually felt a huge sense of belonging of like, oh, like I'm here. And at the same time, like not there were still these other nicknames that were being used around me that eventually I had to like stand up to and go through my own process to really confront the individuals that were saying that, and like that's not okay. Um, in this current moment, I'm thinking to myself about how long I allowed it to be okay. Um, and that just was what it was. But it took me to that moment of like, you know, even with the names here, so I have my own name, but there was power in the nicknames as well, and the power of belonging, the power in the names that we had chosen for ourselves. power of belonging, and the power of very much feeling like you didn't fit in. Like and Black Guy and Special Dark Chocolate really hit those places for me. I'm curious for you. I'm curious for you as you were going through life here, if there are any names or nicknames or different like labels that you put on yourself that for you like continue to help you feel more belonging, or not belonging, or if you have any comments on what I said, like please bring it in. Like I love to get your thoughts. I did not expect to go here, and so I think it's part of the World Joy philosophy. We go where the moment takes us, and we're there with it.
It's very interesting. I was going to a place while I'm listening to my childhood and the nicknames, and also my father and my son. Um, in my childhood, I wasn't given nicknames, surprisingly, other than Mary Lou. That's just closest they're gonna do. Other nicknames would be like name calling. I got that, but I didn't get nicknames. And that belonging you were talking about, I felt that you belong if you have a nickname. Everybody I knew had a nickname, and it was usually their name shortened or something they were well known for. Well, I was only known as the smart kid, top of the class. And so they didn't call me, hey, top of the class or hey, smart kid. Um, so I went through, I don't know how many different phases and series of trying to create a nickname for myself. And I tried to shorten my name. I'm like, why? People would ask me, why are you trying to shorten your name? It is the shortest name. It's only 4 letters. And so I came up with Riri and May and all kinds of things. Then I started lengthening it and calling myself May Rose and Rose May. And eventually I let it go. Me, my sisters and I, they bring it up every now and then and say May May or something. Is it May May or Riri? I mean, I literally wrote it on everything thousands of times. Finally, I was like, I'm Mary, and I'm just Mary. To this day, when people say, what do I call you? I'll say, just call me Mary. I don't care what age you are or whatever. It's just Mary, because that's who I am. And my dad has this thing of not calling people by nicknames too often. Every now and then, if you can't get your name right, he has this adamant about calling people by their name they were born with. And I never understood it. And he would say, what's wrong with calling up? That's the name. That's what you named him. Like my son is Dennis Kyle. He has Dennis from his dad, but he's not a junior or second because he has a different middle name. And we always called him Cal in the same household. It was easier to differentiate. And after the divorce and a lot of series of things, my son goes back and forth whether he wants to own that name because he doesn't want to walk or be anything like his dad in the shadow because he has a negative um, experience with his dad. So when we call him Cal and my dad says Dennis, he's like, what's wrong calling him Dennis? That's his name. Or my daughter who has tons of nicknames, he always calls her by her birth name, which is McKaylin. Can't always spell it, right? But he always calls her by her full name. And if we call her a nickname, sometimes he'll even say, who is that? And that who is that? Well, I just said that is it just brought curiosity to me of when we create these names other than the name we were, I'm not just gonna, I don't even think it's a given we were birthed with. It's our name. Um, who is that? Like, is it authentically you? Is it a self-created you? Is it created from what you wanted to create, you chose, or was it created from the environmental experiences and things that were influential to you? Or is it both? It's really curious.
I love that. And I like in this space, I'm tempted to try and like see what the answer is. And I'm like, oh no, that's not what this is about. Like you just you opened up something here to slow down and allow that question to like play out over the upcoming days and weeks. Like who is that? And then the curiosity behind that. Is it created, taken on and so forth? Um, yeah, it's wonderful to be in this conversation here with you here, Mary. I think um I feel that when you talk about when you talk about it, that like just using the birth names there, uh as someone who recently reclaimed his name, like this has only been it's been less than 2 years. You've only known me as Niyama, and part of this is I'm like I want to let you know that there was a person that there was whole person that existed beforehand, and to me there's like and the insistence I have on calling people by their name. Names have become incredibly important. Um, and it's as we're talking here, like I realize, like, oh wait, this whole conversation is it's all about belonging, isn't it? Like, as for me, it's what is the name that you prefer? And once you tell me, like, so I'll ask someone will tell a name and like, oh, is that your full name? And then they'll typically share their full name. Um, and I ask, what's the name that you prefer? And it's very interesting to see how few people feel like they get that question. And it's also interesting to see how confronting a question like that can be. What is the name that you prefer? Well, everyone just calls me this. That's usually what happens afterwards. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm totally cool with that. And what is your preference? What is your preference right now? And just being, it took me to that place of just being really dogged about like, I am happy to call you whatever you want, should it be what you actually want to be called. So it's a different flavor than your father, where it's like this was the name that was given to you. Actually, it makes me think of my dad, who was like, his name is not Nemo, it is Niyama. What are you doing? Like out in the middle of a parking lot, outside of a a Chinese buffet. But there's I believe that there is importance, and I believe there is power in the names that we use, both in the names as they were bestowed upon us. Niyama's I'm named after my grandfather as well, right? So we have like power coming through generationally, and then there's also power in, how do I say it, in our own relationship with how we allow others to be in relationship with our name. I'll put it that way, right? So there's one thing, at least I'll speak for me here, and I'll be curious for you and your experience with yourself or with any other people out there, where it's like, there's one thing to be about this for, um, actually, I'm looking at the time, so I'll bring this in and then we'll actually start wrapping up here for us today. Um, but I know that there's just a difference between I'm going by Nemo, and I'm going to go by Nemo because it brings me great joy. But I'm also going to go by Nemo because when you hear the word Nemo, it's going to put it like you'd be like the fish. That I have thousands of people who've done that like double take and said either their very next words. I'm like, hi, my name is Nemo, with a smile and with the delivery. And they're like the fish, or like the movie, like thousands. I was like, is it hundreds? I'm like, no, it is thousands of people that I've met that have done that. And and the impact of being able to use that name to like hide what I didn't want you to see. This is what I want you to see about me. And so there's way more that can come out of this conversation around the power of our name. Mary, I am really grateful that I got to be in this conversation with you. And I'm it has opened up a lot of curiosities, not just about you, which I look forward to finding out more about as we go onto the World Joy platform and other conversations together, but also it's opened up some things for me to consider about myself and to see where does the power lie within it, and how can I make sure that I'm showing up in the world in the ownership of everything that comes along with the name. So what I feel is that in a couple of weeks we may have another power of your name conversation, and we'll take it with whoever is there and explore some other things as well, and really get into the place of how do you capture the power of your name. And you know, it's interesting. I realize here, Mary, like there's a tendency, that the like trying to converge this into, here goes the lesson. Now that you know about the power of your name, go out in the world and you can own it, and so on and so forth. And I'm gonna purposefully choose not to go down that route right now, and instead allow for us to like let things emerge as the result of this conversation. I am curious for you as we end here today. What has been your greatest insight, curiosity, or question? Something that's come up as a result of this conversation in any way, shape, or form? Because we are looking here, we are allowing ourselves to be in a space of transformation, and what we're looking here is to see what is the seeds that might grow into something else. Should you want them to?
I take away from this the questions, the curiosities that have come up, and the most connected and powerful thing is to question myself and invite others to ask the question and answer it themselves of the name you prefer. It really what you prefer, or what everybody calls you. And if it is what you prefer, own it. It's you. How do you feel about it? And I'm glad that I prefer Mary LP, and I feel more proud of it, and that I am showing up as Mary, not just because it's a given name that I was born with, not just because it's a beautiful name, or not just because everybody's told me that. I really overall feel that I am Mary. And it encourages me and inspires me to show up as that Mary. It feels like I'm more powerful. I can walk around, I am Mary. I am Mary, I am Mary. Hey, I'm Mary.
Well, Mary, I am glad that we had this conversation. Thank you so much for being here. And it is great to see you and to see you even more fully. I'll tell you the impact of your shares here and being in this space here. So I do feel that our conversations can have a new level of richness, at least that 1% more richness to it, knowing more about you and knowing more about your story, knowing more about you and your relationship with your families and so on and so forth. I appreciate you letting me see the fullness of you here, or more of the fullness of you in this conversation. And I look forward to more of that. I'm going to speak really quickly to everyone here and just say we're at the end of this World Joy conversation. And if you're interested in joining us here in an upcoming conversation, just go to beworldjoy.com to come and participate in this. You'll have a chance to meet open-hearted strangers like Mary and myself. And we will engage in conversations with you. And in those conversations will be curiosity based to help you go and find out new things about yourself, or to remember things that you may not have thought were relevant or important at this time. so that you can reclaim it and add that to the powerful way that you show up in the world. Because right now, the world needs you. So go on, be heard, be seen, be world joy. I'll talk to you soon. It's the World Joy Movement. Yeah. What was your greatest insight from this conversation? And if you want to come and be a part of a conversation like this live, it's really simple. Just go to beworldjoy.com and come introduce yourself, and let's take the conversation to the next level, because you're there now. All right, let's play.